We're really excited to have our conversation, Melissa, because when we first started talking, this all began because I couldn't help but notice a LinkedIn post that you shared about some of the technology that you built at Amazon and it being still critical now, almost 15 years later. And to me, that is like a staggering timescale. Because if you think about agile and scrum processes and methodologies, like I feel like code is revolving all the time and constantly being updated. And so to think about something that has been built and is enduring for 15 years
Actually,
is
20 years at this point. It was
oh my gosh.
2001.
So I can't even comprehend that. So and I believe that was the Amazon Apollo project. And so I was hoping we can kind of open up this conversation to learn a little bit more about the story behind your involvement with Amazon Apollo and why that's been important to you, and how the heck does something like that endure even today, 20 years later? So bring us into the story. What was the beginning of that project like?
Apollo started because Amazon at the time had a script called Website Push. And it was a shell script or a Perl script. There was a comment at the top that said this won't scale past 4 onlines. And I'm not sure how many we had at the time, 50, 100, one of those numbers at the time seemed very big and today seems very small. And what it did was it picked up the website binaries and copied them from the staging server off to websites.a or websites.b. And then once it was fully uploaded, there was a symlink websites that flipped between the two. And this script was duplicated for the supply chain team. It was called supply chain, or for the fulfillment center teams, which you called distribution centers back then. And that was the deployment. And it was getting slower and slower. And there was this, when we pushed a bug, you had only one chance to fix it. Because if it were the new version had been uploaded to website.a, the old version was in .b. And if you tried to upload a fix, you stomped your working copy of the website. So there would be con calls for 12 hours where people debated whether or not to roll back or roll forwards. And it wasn't that simple back then because, for example, let's say Oprah had just done her book launch. Well, the content had gone out. And so we would actually violate contracts if we did a rollback to the old version. But yet, what were the odds of being able to fix it? So it was very fraught. And the fact that it took a long time to move the bits out to the site because the websites, I mean, this was all the content and everything that ran the Amazon website was all getting pushed out. The time to do that push was measured in hours, and the time to get it out to all the onlines. And so, should we add more staging servers? Well, but the sheer limit of networks, this was 2001, was in our way. And so what do we do? And so my boss came to me and said, I'd like you to first of all take over the script. Our team was the infrastructure tools team. We'd previously done systems automation. We called it Disco. We had kind of cleaned up how we did password management. All sorts of like kind of uncool things like that. Um,
Disco's a pretty fun name for a project.
it is I justify that it stood for distributed software configuration or systems configuration. And that was, but really I just wanted to call it Disco, and we had a disco ball as our mascot and stuff. So I got asked to speed up the pushes, and what they wanted me to do was to make website push use BitTorrent. And this seemed like a fine solution if you define the problem as the bits aren't moving fast enough. But I looked at it and I said, I don't think this is a bits moving problem. The issue really is this websites.a and .b thing. Like, really, we should have more flexibility. And the analogy I used when explaining to people was that we should treat our compiled binaries like we treat our source code. That we love them, we care for them, we understand where each line came from. We have revisions. We understand there's like checkpoints, and you can look. We were using Perforce. I think Amazon may still, um, but it's it actually fairly recently migrated from CVS. Um, but it's we took good care of these, and maybe we should treat our binaries the same way. And my management told me, "No, don't they said, "No, don't, go build something new. We really just want you to use BitTorrent." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then what happened was myself and 2 other engineers locked ourselves into a room. It was Christmas, and at Amazon, no one pays attention to you at Christmas. You're either getting orders out the door or no one's paying attention to you. So we actually had like this 3-month period where we could just be heads down. We locked ourselves in a conference room, covered the whiteboard with designs, developed this whole set of primitives like, okay, the binaries, the libraries, they have versions. We want to put these in collections. Those collections have versions. You know, the whole idea of Garupa and services was very new at the time. The code base was migrating away from Obidos, and so we had this event like we could use this idea of major versions and minor versions, and things were compatible or not. We could declare compatibility, and it was this really exciting world that wasn't just this is the date stamped binary. So we put all that together. January comes around, the company wakes up and discovers that I'm not, in fact, doing BitTorrent. And I said, but we made it so the transport is pluggable. There's an API, so someone else could write a BitTorrent client for it. I still actually have in my mind sitting at that meeting and getting the look from management. And they said, okay, well, here's the deal. Like you have, I don't remember if it was 2 weeks or 4 weeks, probably 4 weeks. You have 4 more weeks, and then you need to like ship or shut it down. I said, oh, absolutely, no problem. Knowing completely in my head, there's no way we could get it done in 4 weeks. But, forgiveness, permission, all that. So we worked another 4 weeks. It still wasn't quite ready. I think we pulled something together and pretended that it was like kind of an alpha version. And we went after the team that was most ignored. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot another bit. All of the pushes, because website push was a single thing, had to go through a central team called Houston. As in Houston, we have a problem with the launch. This also confused new hires who thought that the team was actually in Houston, Texas. Um, so if you weren't supported, if you weren't the website, no one would pay attention to you and you wouldn't get good support from Houston. You wouldn't get features you needed, blah, blah, blah. So in order to launch it, we went after the most ignored team in the company, which was the supply chain team. And we said, hey, we've got this new thing. We will cater to you. We will do this for you. We will help this work for you if you'll be willing to be our first customers. And they said yes because they were getting ignored by the rest of the company. And so we got them on board, got them successful. And I ended up meeting probably every single person on Amazon because I pitched this to, I did training for every engineer. I pitched this to project managers, TPMs, TPPMs, whatever we called them back then, which may still be what they call them. Pitched it to VPs and sold everyone on this. And then, left Amazon about 5 years later. It was still going strong. And then realized it was still going as the years passed. And, it completely supplanted Houston. And as far as I know, they never did write a BitTorrent client for it because the problem was not moving bits. The problem was configuration management.
Thanks for sharing all that because I joined Amazon 2008 out of college, and with no prior industry experience, I was taking for granted of all the nice things Apollo offered. And not until I left Amazon 4 years later, realized, wait a minute, this is not something that every company has. Like my current company have to do all of that, like all the heavy lifting to SSH into the server and do the deployment manually and writing a script. I was so old fashioned. And then I realized, well, how advanced that Apollo is and how much it makes life easier for engineers at Amazon, like for deployments. And so, like, so many ways you can control your deployment to different destination, development, branch or staging and production, and then you can version control, you can roll back and all that. Dashboard, you can runtime, visibility was this is magical. And this is the first time I hear the origin story how Apollo, the system, came about. So it really that's really fascinating.